Hey folks, we're back. We're doing a mix in Universal Audio's Luna of Neon Hornet's song Take It Off. And we're going to do some guitar stuff today. However, first, we're going to talk about the level of the recording and what it is adding up to on the sum here on the mix bus.
If I cannot have it, then I'll break it off.
I mean, we're getting up there pretty good on the level, and if we need to back off a few things, what I would suggest doing, and what I have done on this mix once before here, is to pull down the actual tracks. And what I mean by actual tracks is the ones that are either printed or have audio on them, not auxiliaries, okay, or buses, etc. So to do that, what I'm going to do, I'm going to come over here to, let's say, the kick drum. I'm going to highlight everything over to the mix bus. And then I'm going to use the command key to unhighlight a few things like the Ocean Way Studio, the EMT 140, the lead vocal sub. These are going to be fine. Yep, okay. Those are auxiliary subs right there, the lead vocal 1176 and the Fatso. I need to undo the guitar sub. By the way, I made a guitar sub and we'll get to that in a minute. Everything is normal right now. I just made a sub for them to go to. And I need to get rid of the drum sub. And that's it, because this kick snare processed and the smash process are actually printed tracks. There are no buses going to those tracks, and they are printed, and so these levels on the faders are actually the level of those. So if I have all these highlighted now, I can actually make a group by hitting Command G. I'm going to call this group all printed tracks, even though they're not just printed. That's just something to call them right now. Okay. Over here on my groups section, if I click on that, I can now undo those. And when I click on one of these tracks that is in that group, all of them, boop, will highlight. And awesome. So now I can just grab one fader. Let's pick one here. I'll pick the snare processed one. I'm going to pull that down by, say, a dB. Everything moves down in conjunction with that amount. So the relationship with each channel or track is the same. Even when I pull it down here, it's all maintained the same. So let me put that back, because my tracks are actually okay right now, I think. So I'm going to leave them at where they were. Just showing you how to quickly fix a gain stage structure if you're hitting too much, if you're seeing too much level up here on the summing, or you're getting, too much level at the output here. You can grab one of these, pull them all down. And the relationship, by the way, of the sends that are going to auxiliaries will stay the same. No matter what my fader is, if I pull the fader down, that means less is going to that send and everything will be fine. It'll be congruent with what we had before. So let me undo that, put it back where it was. And let's get to some guitar stuff. I'm going to unselect the group so that I can select on any channel. All right, so guitars. We have electric guitars, all these blue tracks here. I made a new subgroup, which is a bus that all of those are sending to that bus and are going to the mix bus. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to play it a little bit, and then I'm going to put some tape on it, I think.
If I cannot have it, then
Okay, yep, on these two tracks here, I'm going to go ahead and put the tape machine on there. I'm going to leave it at the same setting it was before, which was 250. Okay, now those still, to me, sound a little bit muddy. So what I did simply was to pull out some of that mud in the low end. So there's a high pass around 43, pulled out some of the 73-ish bell, and another bell on the 200 area on this track. Let me play that track for you. Yeah, just getting rid of some of that bunched up low end there. I did pretty much the same thing on this one. It's not exactly the same because I didn't just copy it over. I kind of went through and listened and came up with the same, looks sort of the same. Now this channel here, this track, Electric Guitar 3, let me play that by itself for a second. Got a cool effect on it. But some of those attacks are real pokey to me. And so my first thought is to put a plugin on here, which is old as dirt, but it sounds great. The old vintage warmer. Something I reach for all the time on electric guitars because it just works. I even have my own little preset that is called Peaky Electric Guitar because it works so well. If I turn this on solo, let's turn this off, and then I'll turn it on and let you hear the difference. Just a little subtle compression and harmonics, which is what this thing's doing here. It's mostly compression. It's got some harmonics going on. Not a lot. It just sounds cool. It's not doing a whole lot, so it's not affecting the overall sound. It's just sort of making it sit a little bit better. Now, the one thing I would do after this, I'm going to put this LA3A compressor on here and level out those two guitars. I'm going to turn this off and then on. You can really hear the difference now, what that vintage warmer is doing to that one guitar over on the right side. Let's listen to that with the rest of the band. I'll turn that off and then back on. Right, I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to take this guitar stub now, I'm going to move it over a little bit so that these three electric guitars, the intro guitar, the electric guitar 2, electric guitar 3 are going to that specific sub because the solos are going to be different, I think. And they will, I think, need to go to a different sub or just straight to the mix bus, which is where they're going to go now. Yeah, we'll kind of deal with those a little bit later. Actually, I'm going to put some tape on them right now. Cool. We'll kind of come back to those as we're doing some automation, I think, and maybe put some more effects on those. One thing I want to add, though, before I finish this video is something to do with the drums. It's something that I call bite, and it has to do with the kick and the snare. So let me head over here to the drums right fast. I'm going to solo up all these drums. They sound good to me right now. However, they could sound a little bit more aggressive with the hits of the kick and the snare. And so what I'm going to do, folks who are familiar with a lot of Chad Blake's music or maybe Vance Powell might recognize this sound. I just call it a bite, and it's got to do with the attack of the two kick and snare tracks. So I have here Ascend going to the bite at unity gain. I'm going to unmute those. If I solo that track right now, I have the summing on. That's what we hear with the kick and the snare right now. Let me pull that up right fast. What I want to do with that sound is I want to give it some real grit right fast. Usually with like I use the Culture Vulture for this because of the Pinto distortion type here, and I'm sure you can use anything you want. You can probably use the Decapitator version of this as well. To me, nothing really in the plugin world gets this sound except the Culture Vulture, and I like this sound. So let me I'm gonna play this now. I'm gonna bypass this effect and then we'll pull it in. Okay, so that's pretty much blown up, right? It's blown out, it's distorted, it's pretty nasty sounding. What I want to do though is I want to focus on the beginning of each one of those hits, the transient push at the beginning. So after I've processed those two sounds through the Culture Vulture, I'm going to shape that sound a little bit with a EQ. You can use any EQ you want on this. I'm taking out the low end a little bit. I just want kind of the rounded middle of it. This is an area that I would refer to as the biting area of a sound, between about 200, 300 hertz and maybe the 3000 area. So I'm gonna solo this track, this bite track, with the kick and the snare. I have to solo the drum sub to hear those two. And we're gonna listen to those two together. So without the bite, and now with. Okay. Check. Okay, here's something interesting going on here. Whenever you move a filter on an EQ, we have a phase shift. In this selection here, I have a natural phase, which is sort of like using hardware. Zero latency, by the way, is just like a standard EQ. It uses a lot of phase shifting to make EQ and filters work. Linear phase will be pretty much zero. There are degrees of linear phase, but I just leave it on natural phase. I like the sound of natural phase, but I'm always checking the phase on the plugin to hear what's going on with the mixture of the two. One thing to note though, before I do this, you might see people doing tests, sometimes calling them null tests, where if they'll flip the polarity of something and then, see if it cancels out. That works perfectly in that situation. However, in this situation, if I hit this polarity switch, I'm not really comparing the sound of the kick and the snare to the rotated phase of this new bite track, because I have affected this track already. So I hope that makes sense. I've put it through this Culture Vulture, so it's not at all the same anymore as those two tracks that I'm going to compare it to with the rotated or flipped phase polarity here. Let me demonstrate that. I'm going to turn this on. Those are the two together. Now let me flip this phase, or rotate the polarity. Now I don't know about you, but that sounds a lot better with the flipped phase on this EQ, and because it's doing what I want it to do, it's giving it the bite that I want to hear, and it's letting the low end do its thing, even though it's bypassed here. It's letting the overall low end of the mix do a really heavy bottom, and accentuating the bite that is coming through the distortion unit here. Try that again. This is with and without. It gets real nasally and nasty sounding. Okay, one more thing I'm going to do on this track is that I'm going to use a gate to sort of clip the end of those sounds. Okay, what I mean by that is the drum sounds are going to come through the distortion unit, the Culture Vulture. I'm going through this EQ, I'm flipping the polarity on it, and now I'm going to clip the end of those little hits that are coming through. By the way, this is just a simple gate. You can just pull up. This is the one I always use. I've used it for forever. And it's on the classic gate thing. You just move the slider up till you get the gating you want. Cool. I'm going to turn that off and then back on. Okay, now I'm going to compare that with the two tracks together, and we're going to blend it in. It's really cool. If you listen real close, you can hear that the low end, sort of the sub low end of this drum kit with, well, these two tracks, is getting heavier as I pull this in, and it's getting more in your face bitey as I do that too. Cool. All right, let me put all the drums in, and we're going to add that into the mix. Okay, let me hear that with the whole band. I'm going to mute it first. Let me head back to the beginning to do this. Let me just actually grab a section. Perfect. That's what I want it to do. I want it to bite and hit low end and high end with real short bursts of energy. We're going to feed that to the mix bus. Yes, good. Already there. So let's move that back. We'll listen to the whole thing for a second. Cool. Now, I have a little plugin here that you might have noticed that I'm not really using. It's a MXR flanger. We're going to get to this in the next video. I'm not going to use it during the whole mix, but I am going to use it in certain places. And it will be automated on and off. For instance, at the intro, I'll probably have this on for a moment. See that little bit of movement going on right there. Now we go back to... Right. Those are those little things that most people don't notice, but will make a difference in the end. Okay, so that's it for today. We got through the rhythm guitar parts here. I'm going to focus on the intro guitar next time and the solo guitars, and maybe start some automation although we are going to do some effects on the bridge section as well. So thank you everyone for watching. I really appreciate it. If you like this video, please keep hitting the like, please hit the subscribe, and more videos are coming very soon.